I will do something very similar with this here as I did with the summary analysis and relevance paragraphs for the annotated bibliography. I'll go through the introduction, right? We'll have some slides. We'll look at an example, all right? Same thing with the body and the research process. And so keep in mind that these are just gauges, right? 1 to 2 pages. In other words, I'm trying to also let you know it doesn't have to be 7 pages, right? The research process, approximately a page, maybe a little less. Your research findings, right? This is where you're probably going to take the majority of our information will come from your annotated bibliography, however, not a copy and paste, because what we need to do in this particular situation is discuss the findings in relation to your research question, in relation to what your argument is, how that person has spoken about it. And then we're also going to have the situation to where you need you now to respond to each one of those findings and kind of put almost like putting a story together in some way. What's the narrative, right? What did the 3 or 4 research findings say about your topic? Does it help you reach a conclusion? Does it help answer your research question? If it does, what is it, right? So to kind of give you some guiding, so I say respond to each finding by answering one or both of the following questions. How do these findings compare or contrast to either your personal experience with the topic? How do they compare and contrast to each other, the research and the information from other credible sources? So if you've got one particular resource is come to this conclusion, they've got one over here that's come to maybe a different conclusion. How do they compare and contrast, and what does that mean in the overall scheme of things, if you will, right? Specifically, maybe to your specific research question, something very specific, maybe that you're trying to find out because they were inquiring into this topic. Did it help? Not help? Maybe, perhaps. So where have you arrived, right, in some way in your research? What does it all mean? And of course, you'll have a future research paragraph. What research questions related to your topic should researchers focus their attention on in the future? So here's what we've got so far. Here's your topic. Found out these things. You kind of figure out this is kind of where we are, right? This is where maybe somewhat quote unquote of an answer or some suggestions or recommendations or whatever. And then now that you're kind of arrived at this point, what kind of recommendations do you have for the future? And then you got a couple of conclusion sections, review and reflect, restate the questions you attempted to answer. Are you surprised to learn anything? And then you've got an opportunity to give me your final thoughts, right? Explain what all this information means to you based on what you learned. All right. So that's a quick overview. And of course, here's one of the examples of writing for an academic audience. We'll talk about syntax. We'll talk about wordiness. We'll talk about some different things like that, phrases that we can use in our writing that help us think about, in some ways, what they call elevate. So between now and then, maybe throughout the rest of the week as you're kind of preparing for this, spend some time reading the 3 readings for this week, and I'll be addressing those later on. Of course, I'll put this is part 2, I guess, so we'll put part 2 in there shortly. All right, guys, thank you for watching. I hope you have a most wonderful week. I'll be back with you later this week, and we'll start talking more specifically, not only about the sections for Project 3, but we'll also talking about these readings and how we can kind of think about using them. We need to think about converting, in some ways, part of our research, some of our research proposal into how the research project itself, the inquiry research project itself, should kind of like sound, more like an argument in some ways, right? More like the results of a research project that you found something. And so we'll talk about some helpful tips to do that. All right, guys. Most importantly, stay safe, stay awesome. Bye now.